listening to the Adventuring Party for the 3rd week of June 2022. This week, the calamitous couplet try to gain some valuable experience from the Tome of Gygax. The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop-related gaming the Irish way. Welcome, dear listeners, to our overly elaborate smoking room, which I think is our second smoking room and is also covered in severed heads. There's gin and brandy on the side. I forgot. I've lost track of how many memes this room contains, but it is where we review Gary Gygax's very first Dungeon Master's Guide. Who's here with me?
It's just you and me, Warlord. It is I, Savage Mick. We're back for another Tome of Gygax. We've I don't know. We haven't quite exhausted the comedy value on our overstuffed archers and fireplace full of flaming skulls keeps us warm. We'll work on a few more descriptions. Should we have a manservant or someone who brings the drinks? We can figure that out later. What we're dealing with today, of course, we're past combat, right? So we can leave our blood-soaked neck stompers at the door and move on to more genteel parts.
We are past the point of killing things, and now on to the very important stuff of getting better because you killed things and took their stuff. We are beginning on page 84, the experience section.
Experience tells me anything. It's that I should open a beer at this point. Yeah, there we go. Ooh, she's a foamy one. Yeah, and experience is important for any dungeoneer, explorer, adventurer. It's apart from loot, it's probably the only other thing that really matters when we go playing a D&D. So what has the Gygax got to say about experience?
The judgment factor is inescapable with respect to weighting experience for the points gained from slaying enemies and or gaining treasure. So that's just the first sentence of the section, and I think it sets the tone for how Gygaxian this is going to get for what probably isn't the most complicated section.
I like how he's hedging his bets already. It's like, you're going to have to make this up.
You may have heard, gentle viewers, that you get XP for killing a monster, but also that you would get XP for the gold of the monster, and that is indeed the basics of XP in these older version schemes. But for advanced Dungeons and Dragons, there is a bit more of a breakdown as we move on to page 85, where there's a section of dividing XP. There's the XP for the monsters. Then you total up the surviving characters, anyone who took part, no matter how insignificantly, and then you divide the XP from the monsters by the number of characters. And then there has to be an exception, because that's how we roll in these times. Monsters slain single-handedly, and a magic user protected by fighters keeping off the enemy so he or she can cast spells which slay monsters is not fighting single-handedly. These accrue XP only to the Slayer and are not included in steps 1 through 3 above. So, a little bit of an odd incentive to go glory hounding. And again, maybe putting a little bit of a lie to the whole OSR philosophy that, everyone in the party must work together. You'll be destroyed otherwise. But there's a rule right here from Gary Gygax saying, yeah, just run in and start killing stuff yourself. That's what real adventurers do.
Well, okay, yes and no. I mean, sure, whoever puts the final blow in gets the lion's share. But you've got to survive to get any XP at all, so no harm having a few ablative barbarians hanging around to do most of the neck-chopping work while you hang back with magic missile, ready to kill snipe and pick up the just rewards for your careful planning.
I have to wonder if this is some form of attempt to give bonus XP to fighters or something like that. Like, Gygax has got this very odd seesaw between players should be really careful, they should check everything for traps, they should assume everything that has a trap even if they don't find a trap on it. But also he has this distinctive streak of, you should all be real heroes, you should charge in, you shouldn't be cowardly, You should act like Conan, or this sense. So it's like it's never one thing with Gygax in these regards. But yes, there's a method for calculating the XP from the monsters, which means not only the base XP value for the monster's hit dice, but also XP for every hit point that the monster has, which scales on the same scale. And then there's also a different bonus XP if they have special abilities, depending on their hit dice, and more XP if they have exceptional abilities.
This sounds like advice is for those who are crafting monsters rather than anything the players need to know. But it is useful to have some sort of guideline if you want to start throwing your own together, that you can look at a monster and go, well, I can sort of see why it would be this much XP given its withering stare or ability to walk through walls.
Yeah, but there are examples given. Like the difference is interesting. Like at the very bottom of it, it's stuff like going from, if you had a 1 hit dice plus 1 is double XP for someone who just has 1 hit dice. To the point where if you gave a 1 hit dice monster like special abilities, it still would not be as much XP as someone who had 1 hit dice plus 1 hit point. It's an interesting foible of going so granular with your levels of XP. There's no simple formula of it has this many hit dice, it has this many special abilities. It's all a bunch of bespoke addition, apparently. And I get the idea of, you don't want to give as much XP for the unlucky orcs that rolled 1 or 2 hit points versus their 7 or 8 hit point boss, but it does seem a little predictable to be having to count up the max hit points of every monster and roll them all ahead of time and craft exactly how much XP each member of this bunch of wandering monsters is. It seems like the kind of thing that's very easy to just forget how you rolled at the time. Presumably Gygax would just assume that, well, note-taking is the sign of a proper GM or something.
Well, given that we've got monster stat blocks and things, you can just take them out of the box, right? You don't have to roll every individual mook orc in an encounter. Nor would, I don't think even Gary would have expected. The Monsters Manual is, of course, the companion to this book, so presumably all the defaults are in there with pretty easy to pluck out XP totals.
I have a copy of the Monster Manual in another room. I haven't checked whether it actually does pre-calculate the XP. But my understanding is that the expectation was that you wouldn't take average hit dice for monsters. You would just say, well, these are 8 orcs. They're all 1 hit dice, so roll 8d8, and that shows the pecking order of the orcs in this particular band. And presumably, you might have someone of back and forth of the players that they have surprised. They say, well, which of these are the runtiest looking? Because I want to kill a few of them before they get a chance. And when the ones have 6 or 7 hit points, we might not kill him in one blow because it's his first dead and he didn't have as many pluses. I suspect that was something that was intended for play back then, but I don't know. It's interesting that it's this point of minutiae, but again, it is minutiae, so we should probably not spend too long on it.
Let's crack on. Having killed them, what do we get?
That's the thing. That's the next thing, is we now go to experience value of treasure taken. Convert all metal and gems and jewellery to a total value in gold pieces. If the relevant relative value of the monsters or guardian device fought equals or exceeds that of the party which took the treasure, experience is awarded on a 1-to-1 basis. If the guardian was relatively weaker, award a experience on a 5 gold piece to 4 gold piece, 3 to 2, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, or even 4 to 1 basis according to the relative strengths. For example, if a 10th level magic user takes 1,000 gold pieces from 10 kobolds, the relative strengths are about 20 to 1 in favour of the magic user. Such strength comparisons are subjective and must be based on the degree of challenge the Dungeon Master had the monsters pose the treasure taker. That's a kind of thing. So not only the supposed 1-to-1 relationship between XP and gold seems to have been shattered here, because apparently what's really important is how strong the monster you took it from was. But I thought the whole point of having XP for gold was so that people would be, exploring empty rooms to see if someone had hidden a bag of coins in a in a side corner or something. But now apparently, if you're not fighting someone for the gold, it isn't worth XP?
Yeah. If you just stumbled across it or didn't find it via trickery or violence, then is it really worth anything? I mean, of course, apart from its numismatic value.
I guess. Like, that's certainly an interpretation, and I suspect it is one of the interpretations that people have taken forward from First Ed, but I don't know, I guess I'm used to the purists, the OSR people who, despite their worship of Gygax, seem to take more from basic D&D, where such provisions or exceptions were not really considered all that high, and they would just go, yeah, you found 10 gold pieces in a pot somewhere, you get 10 XP. Whereas Gygax seems to be really leaning into more of a concept of it. It's about the challenge. It's about the trap that you had to get through to get there, or the puzzle, or the monsters.
Relatively speaking, and depending on subjective circumstances, and in your opinion, it's having gone out of his way here. So okay, look, your hatred of the OSR is well known and presumably even well founded. But if they want to base their interpretation of the 1 through D&D, or what is a fun experience for them, on even older, simpler versions of D&D, I say more power to them. However, Gary moved on and said, "Okay, I've got this idea. I want to make these. I want to create some nuance inside these systems, and here we have it. However, it is immediately wrapped in a, well, you're going to have to sort of figure this out and subjectively weigh it up yourself. But here's a bunch of integrate systems alongside that. Have fun." So I mean, was Gary Gygax perhaps an android sent from the future to destroy D&D? Because he seems sometimes to be operating on the basis that you're going to track and weight and average and multiply every single aspect of this game on a per instance basis, and somehow it's going to run smoothly as well. I don't know. I mean, it's the kind of stuff I can see working incredibly well today with computer assisted DMing. That's the thing we should. Chimera DMing? I think that's what it's called. Let's call it that. Like, you've got Chimera chess. But we're not quite there yet where I can have my... What would a good Siri style name for a GM assistant? It's, the Cyclops. It sees all. But it's somewhat, myopic. Binocular? Yeah. No, that's the opposite of Cyclops. It's if it can see what's going on and use sort of natural language processing to understand what's happening, and then in the background do all of this stuff while you get on with GMing, great. But to take even, because this is coming on top of the combat, it's coming on top of all the henchman stuff and every other damn thing. This really does feel like you either work it all out beforehand, knowing that when they find that cache of rubies and bloodstones and assorted silver statues, that it's worth this much XP, and finding it would have been this difficult, so I've pre-calculated, have a note that this much gold is worth this much XP for this room, for this cache of treasure. Same for anything the monsters are carrying. Same for the monsters with variable hit points and hit dice. Yeah, prep. I suppose prep is the word here. It just means something different in this milieu. It's a lot more about having all of your accountancy done rather than, say, knowing what the relationships between... I presume you've got to know all that stuff as well. But modern GMing advice and prep is about setting up scenes and having NPCs ready and having sort of the plot threads or the things you want to pull on each character's sort of attributes that you want to pull into the game for each session. Here, it sounds like there's an awful lot more tabulation to be done before you got your AD&D game up and running.
Well, again, insurance underwriter. This would have been second nature to him.
Oh, that's true, yeah. That kind of... Yes, this is back of the envelope stuff for him, isn't it?
Yeah, and presumably for a lot of his wargaming buddies who had been brought up on the best of Avalon Hill.
We really do need to give more weight to the insurance underwriting aspect of Gary Gygax's biography in terms of how it interacts with this sort of... Because it's the complaint about D&D for the longest time. it's that nerd game where you spend most of your time looking at a sheet of numbers. And that's true. I think it can be a much more elegant game, but this kind of raw number crunching is very of its time, and of the man's profession.
But also, married to that, there's Gygax, the insurance underwriter, but there's also Gygax, the mean pedantic, where he has to make certain that all treasure must be physically taken out of the dungeon and turned into a transportable medium or stored in the player's stronghold to be counted for experience points. So you don't get anything that you find and then drop. You have to get it out of the dark places and return it to civilization in a way which is totally not colonial in order for it to count.
Look, buddy, I was out fishing the other day and I caught a fish this big. Well, where is it? Oh, it got off the hook. You didn't really catch it then, did you? Nice story. Yes, you gotta drag your loot home. I kind of like that. It means no one ever dings in the middle of a dungeon. Or at least they shouldn't. They ding. They get to level up when they are back in their stronghold counting their readies and realise that, I can afford a new level now. So I wouldn't give them a lot of grief for that.
We'll be getting to the process behind that in a page or so.
Let's go.
I'll save this discussion with downtime for that, but there is a section where all items, including magic, or creatures sold for gold pieces prior to the awarding of experience points for adventure must be considered as treasure taken, and the gold pieces received for the sale add to the total treasure taken.
Now I know what you're going to start going on about slavery, but there's also magical menageries. If it's got an intelligence score of 3, you can't really be a slave. So yeah, I think I want to write that scenario where you're sent into a dungeon to capture things rather than outright kill them. You're going to have to take along all sorts of different equipment for that, and presumably sleep is king.
Oh, you'll have to use those grappling and pummeling rules in order to knock people out.
yeah, awesome. So yeah, some king somewhere wants a manticore for his royal zoo. That's an awesome thing to go send adventurers for. In fact, it's perfect because if they don't come back, it doesn't really matter.
And it is interesting. It's certainly a thing that you could have as a money-making scheme for some people, but yeah, you have to be a little careful, like, to define your terms of what counts as an okay creature to sell for loot.
One that someone will buy. Yes, no, maybe slavery. Look, if they're orcs, can it really be called slavery? Think of it as community service for crimes they almost definitely committed somewhere.
Let's move on. Then there is, of course, one of those infamous and wonderful passages of Gary Gygax arguing with some pedantic nerds that have been dead for years, where he goes on to passive-aggressively defend the XP for gold system. Players who balk at equating gold pieces to experience points should be gently but firmly reminded that in a game certain compromises must be made. While it is more realistic for clerics to study holy writings, pray, chant, practice self-discipline, etc. to gain experience, it would not make a playable game roll along. Similarly, fighters should be exercising, riding, smiting pelts, telling at the lists, and engaging in weapons practice of various sorts to gain real expertise/experience. Magic users should be deciphering old scrolls, searching ancient tomes, experimenting alchemically, and so forth, while thieves should spend their off hours honing their skills, casing various buildings, watching potential victims, and perfectly planning their next job. All very realistic, but conducive to non-game boredom.
I'm not sure he gets to wave that stick around, given how complicated some of these systems are, and how likely your players are going to pass out for boredom between while all these calculations are being run.
Presumably he's talked from the experience of the glee of his fellow wargaming friends totaling up experience points at the end of a session, and presuming that this would clearly be this same experience would be shared by all the 12-year-olds who are buying D&D in bulk at this point. No, it's just I just like these sections are not going to go away, folks. There's every couple of pages there's going to be a section where Gygax just has to tilt it invisible windmill that he probably met at a con and was extremely bored by. But yes, I think we can move on to the use of these experience points to gain levels.
Yeah, so gaining experience levels, this should be simple enough. You got enough points. You check the total for I appreciate that in this version, different classes will have different XP totals they need, but that's still fine. That's easy to keep track of. This will be a breeze. Go on. Oh wait, what's this ESFP?
Experience points are merely an indicator of the character's progress towards greater proficiency in his or her chosen profession. Upward progression is never automatic. Just because Nell Nimblefingers, Rogue of the Thieves Guild, has managed to acquire 1,251 experience points, it does not mean that she suddenly becomes Nell Nimblefingers the footpad. The gaining of sufficient experience points is necessary to indicate that the character is eligible to gain level experience, but the actual award is a matter for you, the DM, to decide.
Wait, so milestone?
So we are about to launch into an almost page-long breakdown of assessing how much like their class each character has been in the previous set of adventures that got them all this XP. And then the DM has to, from this, formulate a score of how thiefly their thief has been, how fighterly their fighter has been. And this extends the amount of downtime the character has to take training to get next level. With the provision that every week of training is 1,000 XP of living and training expenses, because apparently there's no such thing as climbing to the top of the mountain and talking to Mr. Miyagi. No, you have to go to college, find a tutor, and grind off all of your treasure and probably more before you can get that much needed level.
So this system of grading XP awards, so it's a letter system where all the things you've mentioned, you're being graded on how well you role played your class. Which is something Gary's going to force you. So E for excellent, S for superior, F for fair, and then P for poor. And then it comes in, each of those comes in a number from 1 to 4. So what does the number mean?
The number is the number of weeks.
Oh, I see.
So if you have been too nice of a thief and not stolen enough from your fellow party members or the like, you will have to spend your level times 6,000 gold pieces on training all in one go, and you have to make sure you don't get stabbed by anyone who's angry at you in those 4 weeks. And you need to find a higher level thief to train you during all of this. And as we just said, it's only 1,251 experience points to get that level. So presumably you have a situation where you got 1,200 or so XP gold in the dungeon, enough for you to level up, but you need to get 5 times that much to afford your expenses to actually get to level 2.
Okay. What were the max levels for the classes in this? It's not the 20 we know today, is it? It's lower than that.
I think 18 was the first one that really didn't have level, but I think like the PHP sort of assumed you would cap out around 14th, but
right. Got to make them last. Yeah, they don't come easy. I mean, honestly, the whole curriculum's been dumbed down these days. The tests are far too easy. The kids don't know how tough it was to be a monk back in the day. Right, or bard. Actually, bards, they get their own section here, don't they?
Yeah, because they have to pay their college or something. Once they begin gaining experiences, first off, to be a bard in this system, there's a process. I'm pretty sure you have to get like 3 levels of fighter, then start back at level 1 as a thief, get 5 levels of thief, and then go back level 1 as a druid. I get 4 levels druid, and then you come level 1 bard, or it's some crazy system like that.
Prestige upon prestige for the old bard. Nowadays, you go pick up a second-hand loot, hit the inn, and call yourself bard.
Yeah, it is an interesting fall from grace. So the bard was very much leading into the Celtic ambassador slash storyteller, who was a vital link between kingdoms and the repository of all of the Celtic world's history and legends. But then people just sort of overlooked that and went all in on this whole, they're all minstrels. They're all just stupid jesters.
They're just buskers, yeah. Hey, nonny, etc.
But that's probably a thing for another day. But yeah, they have another, I don't even know what is this. Once they begin gaining experience with bards, each must pay tuition to his respective college. These payments and donations must be at least 50% of all monetary gains, plus an additional 1,000 gold piece per level on gaining a higher one. These contributions and payments must be made to a druid whose level of experience is such that he or she is able to use more of their highest level spells than the bard is. In any event, the funds so received do not accrue to the druid, but pass on to the amorphous organisation of druidical colleges.
It's just resting in his account. And no point stabbing him after your tuition to try and get it back. It's already evaporated into the druid collective.
It's a hell of a thing where he's implying this massive network of druids and bards crisscrossing the land, extracting huge sums from their already super overqualified students. Again, I feel maybe we should point out that Gygax, I don't think Gygax finished high school.
Check out the legal profession. This is entirely accurate, you know.
Well, anyway, I think the point I was trying to make was this system as a whole is designed to encourage downtime as a mandatory action of the game. This is like you're supposed to go into a cycle of go into dungeon, get loot, bring loot out, invest loot in self, in your trading, in buying more henchmen or hirelings, in building your stronghold, and then go back into the dungeon. That was the gameplay loop that Gygax wanted. And it was basically rejected by the people actually playing the game because, to their mind, the point was not to do the downtime, the point was to do the gameplay. And what benefit do we get from having all of this downtime and training times and this obvious pyramid scheme of kicking money upstairs to all these high-level NPCs? People did not understand why this was a necessary thing. Now, Gygax had a very idea of, well, that means you're building relationships with your trainers. He wasn't assuming it's kind of Lord of the Rings things where you're the only heroes in the land. He was assuming that there was a network of higher level NPCs at all levels and that you would be forging relationships with them, that you'll be taking time off from dungeons rather than just being, in what we in the modern day would say, the month-long trek from first level to 20th level or anything like that. He was assuming that this back and forth, this cycle would ultimately cause better play, but he, in a very typically Gygaxian fashion, he does not justify that cycle. He simply explains it. And there's no sense of, like, what does this do to the game when you have this set of training time? And also, he does not explain what happens to do if you do pay the druid for all your training and then go steal from the Bard College to get it all back, like you would in Skyrim.
Okay, but I mean, in terms of playing the game, the downtime isn't really an issue. You're not going to sit through all of it. It's just noted that the characters have spent 3 weeks, getting their act together before they go for another dungeon. That's kind of built into the game, and you don't have to you don't have to take 3 weeks off the game before you get to hit the dungeon again.
No, but you have to remember the intended playstyle was for different players. They remember that about you must have full timekeeping to have a proper campaign, where the idea is if someone goes off to train to get to level 7, that character is not available for those 4 weeks, and then other players and other characters have to come in and could possibly get something they wanted in that training period.
Feature. Yeah, I mean, he's allowing for it, and he's being upfront about it. And maybe not to players, but he's letting you know that that's how you're going to do it.
Yeah, he's been upfront to GMs about it. Yeah, like, I guess that's sort of the thing here. It's like, this is all very well for as GM advice, although I do think a couple of bit more context, a bit more conversation with the GMs about why would be helpful.
Gary's very much the generation that says, well, because I told you to. Because I said so. You want to do something else? Go play another game. No one's stopping you. Door's over there. It's wide world of role-playing games. Oh, no, wait. There's just us. Get back in the DM chair. Do what I tell you.
There's all that, but there's also the very, very real fact that XP is a player-facing mechanic. It is entirely meant to be what encourages the players to go into the dungeon and goes up. And you need, if you're forcing on the players this cycle, this gameplay loop, you need to explain to the players that it's important for them to have downtime and consider their place in the world, who they're trained with, can they have a good relationship with, the 5th level fighter in the castle over there, so they can get training or whatever.
Seems pretty obvious. I mean, you're exhausted. Going to dungeons is rough work. You don't want to be doing it every week. You'll die. Anyway, enjoy the fruits of your labour, and also go train, and also give all the fruits to your trainers.
Ultimately, like, a lot of this is subjective. I think it could have been explained better, but like what happened historically, what happened with this is that people took a look at this. Their young minds were confused as to what it was even doing, and they just leapt into the assumptions of what you would call more modern D&D, where they didn't assume that a fighter would need breaks between dungeons. They assumed that the cleric, who's here every week because they don't play the way Gygax did, so the clerics were always part of the same team and always available to the party. Because the clerics will heal us. We'll be back up in a couple of days. I will head straight back into the dungeon again. What's this about weeks of downtime? That's stupid. Let's just play more. And I guess my point here is that maybe if Gygax had explained this better, we wouldn't have had to have all those OSR players who I don't hate. I just think you're lying.
Okay. Man, you and Gygax both were pre-shot for capitalizing. Like, there's a whole... I'm looking at 4 lines of capital letters on how you don't get any more XP points until you've used the XP points you got to go up a level. You can't gain any more if you're at the max for the level you're at. But he feels the need to put this in all caps.
Yeah. Gygax apparently did not like the idea of first level characters just hanging at the back of a bigger level party, throwing stones at the dragons that were fighting and leeching experience points that way. So presumably that was the main point for this, was to avoid such exploits. But anyway, I think the point's been made. We've belabored it. So we're about 30 minutes in. Do we want to start into the next section, the campaign?
The campaign. Oh, I don't know. Like, we've covered not a lot of ground on paper, but it is a fundamental part of the dungeon crawling role playing experience. And maybe we should just leave it there for now. We'll after the massive slog of the last couple of episodes dealing with the combat section, I'd like to come with the campaign because I see climate and ecology is also rolled in here. I think we should come to that fresh next time we enter the tomes. What say you?
Yeah. Let's have a fresh start next time. For our 1 year of Tome of Gygaxing anniversary, I do believe.
Is it? Oh my word! You told me this would just be a quick little series we do. Something light and fluffy.
I just like to point out that the reason I started this was inspired by something called the Plot Points podcast, which is this great podcast by basically a D&D historian who's making a book about how TSR crumbled to dust and was sold in pieces to Wizards of the Coast. And he started reading the DMG with another D&D academic. I think they've gotten to page 20 after about 3 or 4 years. Because you think we're bad for having random asides. It's an art form for them.
It's basically we're in the lead. That's what you're trying to tell me. We're winning. And they can suck it. Go listen to their podcast, folks, if you want even more in-depth look at the background of D&D, that game I swore I wasn't going to talk about much this year. But no, it's been another good episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to go and refill our snifters and fluff up our overstuffed leather couches. Maybe put another skull or two on the fire. And until then, we will see you in the next Tome of Gygax.
This party and this brandy room drinking session is over. Thanks for listening to The Adventuring Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventuringPTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike on version 3 license.